Okay, so I'm here at the Great Salt Lake, but it ain't so great today, as you can see. Actually, this lake is disappearing and it is potentially turning into the United States' worst ecological disaster. There's a huge drought happening and the lake is shrinking. It's way over there. We're gonna try to walk to it. We were over here, right here, somewhere is where the spiral jetty actually used to stick out of the water. But as you can see, it's basically a desert. And recent papers by places like BYU and Utah University are publishing how if this lake disappears, underneath its crust are toxins, basically built up from decades and decades of farming upriver and pesticides coming down and a lot of different chemicals coming to the bottom of the lake floor here. And the worry is, once this lake disappears, which could really just be in a few years, that if the crust opens up and all these chemicals are on top, dust storms could potentially blow all those chemicals all over the valley, all over the people in the Great Salt Lake. And this isn't far-fetched. I mean, there are examples of this happening all over the world. The biggest example is Aral Lake over by the Caspian Sea, where farming and water usage just drained the lake, turned it into a desert with dust storms and chemicals everywhere. And another example is Owens Lake in California. That was a lake where the water was diverted to feed the people in Los Angeles, and the lake slowly disappeared. And that ended up causing dust storms and chemicals, hurting the people around it, costing billions to try to fix and deal with. And we're worried it could happen here as well if we don't do something about it. There's examples not just, in California and Owens Lake and the Middle East. Here in Utah, if you look at a map of here in Utah, you'll see there's 3 lakes: Great Salt Lake, Utah Lake, and Sevier Lake. Maybe it's pronounced Sevier Lake, I don't know. Anyways, it's on the map, but when you go to it, it's just a dry desert. And in fact, I drove by it once. We were on our way to Nevada to go to some caves. And a dust storm came out of nowhere. It hit us hard and it was scary. We couldn't see a foot in front of us. So I had to turn off really quick to the side of the road. And luckily, nothing was there. I could have rammed into a post or off a cliff or a rock. And we were lucky. But I mean, that dust storm came out of nowhere. And that's because that place is just a dry lake bed. And it also disappeared due to farming. The Sevier River used to feed it. Now it's basically drained out by the time it gets to the lake, and it's pretty much empty most of the time. That's an example of a place right here in Utah. Now combine that with dust storms, with toxins everywhere, and what they're saying is this could be the United States' worst ecological disaster if something doesn't happen about it. We're almost there. Oh, look at that. It's pretty hard here. It's all shiny. Plane above me. Anyways, the lake has other effects that if we lose it, can be detrimental to us. First off, there's something called the lake effect, where basically the size of this lake affects the weather and affects the cooling and warming of the area. And if that's gone, that'll affect our winter seasons even more. Also, if there's dust storms happening around here, blowing dust up on the mountains. That makes the snow disappear faster. Also, Utah has something unique called inversion. This is basically where the air and the clouds stay closer to the land. Kind of like fog, but it pushes the air down. Now imagine that air being full of toxins. And these toxins can cause respiratory diseases, asthma, even some say cancer. And so this is some pretty serious stuff. But here we are. That's what's left of the Great Salt Lake so far. Over that way is Nevada. Fish can't really live in here. It's so salty. That's why it's called the Great Salt Lake. But some brine shrimp can live in here. And actually, the brine shrimp here have turned into a huge industry that basically feeds the seafood that we eat today. So as this shrinks, the water becomes even more salty, and maybe even the brine shrimp won't even be able to live in here. Some quick history about this area, because this is a history channel, so I love to do history. The Great Salt Lake is the remnant of an ancient lake, Lake Bonneville, which used to span all the way to the Idaho border and to Nevada, all over northwestern Utah. And I would be 1,000 feet underwater right now. And actually, if you look around the area, you can kind of see the ancient shoreline of this lake. That's one shoreline. There's other shorelines. You can see some really well down here. You probably can't see that far, but about 17,000 years ago, a natural dam broke up in Idaho, which I want to take you guys to someday. It broke, it caused a massive flood. I think I read it was about 10 times the size of the Amazon River. And basically the water just started gushing out, and this place emptied out and slowly went down, and now we have the Great Salt Lake. It filled up in this area because we're in basically a giant bowl called the Great Basin, where there's no place for this water to escape except to right here through evaporation and maybe in the ground. So all the water in western Utah basically comes here and builds up, but it's slowly disappearing. Early humans, Paleo Indians, they didn't necessarily see the Lake Bonneville at its height. They probably saw it as it was shrinking and saw remnants of it. There's some caves over there of some Paleo Indian caves that they found evidence of humans, and they were up on the shoreline when it was up that high. That's a place I'd love to take you guys to. And then slowly other Native Americans started living in the area. The Fremont Indians, I did a video about the Fremont. You can check that out. They lived in this area. In fact, as the water level goes down, they're starting to find some Fremont settlements that were around here. The Fremont kind of vanished or mixed with the next group of people around 1000 AD. And then you start seeing other groups, ones we're familiar with today. The Numic speaking people came from the California, Nevada, South area and came into this region. They became the Shoshone, the Utes, the Paiutes, the Goshutes, and they slowly started coming to this area. And then this is what's neat. My ancestors, the Navajo, their ancestors started coming into this area from the north, from the Canada area. And they were coming from the north, and they actually came into these mountains. And somewhere over there is a cave called Promontory Cave, where they found evidence of these early Navajo peoples. And they know they were from the Navajo, from the Canada area, because of the designs of their moccasins were different than the designs of the other people that lived around here. And so that's really neat, because I probably have some heritage around here, which is kind of cool. We're on the Promontory Peninsula right now. It's kind of this little peninsula that comes out into the Great Salt Lake. But I just wanted to bring some awareness to it, because this could be North America's greatest ecological disaster. It could cause some serious health problems for the people around here. It could destroy multi-million-dollar businesses. This could cause huge disasters all around the world, and they're trying to figure out how to save the Great Salt Lake. Even President Trump made a post that he wants to save the Great Salt Lake and help the state of Utah do it. Now, I don't know how. I don't know the answers. I am a bit hesitant about whether the dominant party here, Republicans, can create some regulations to help control and save the lake, or if we're just going to have to spend our way out of it. I do know that 60–70% of the water that comes here is being taken away by agriculture, and a lot of that is from the alfalfa industry, which really I think I've heard is only about 1% of our GDP here in Utah, although it does help feed the cattle and stuff in the area. But also a lot of that alfalfa is being exported to other countries like Saudi Arabia, so we're basically exporting water outside the state. And I don't know, maybe water prices are gonna become higher and we're gonna have to import water into the state. Maybe we need to start having more yards that have more of a desert style without grass, so that we don't spend water on the grass. I don't know the answer, so leave in the comments what you think needs to be done. But yeah, it's been getting pretty crazy here. Slowly shrinking. The water used to come up to there. It's not just a natural process. The water is actually being taken away from agriculture. It is climate change and global warming, but mixed with everything else. And you can literally see it in front of our eyes happening, and we need to do something about it. So I hope this video helps. Leave in the comments what you think needs to be done. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.